So let's get back to regulation of the gonads. How do we make sure that the testes or the ovaries are doing their jobs properly? So this is all controlled by two specific parts of the brain that then in themselves secrete hormones to regulate the gonads. Those two parts of the brain are kind of in the middle, bottom part of the brain called the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. And you can see them pointed out in this diagram here. So this is where I'm really sad that we're not together and doing this in class, because here's where things usually get fun. Because I like to think of this whole system as the game of hormones. Cue the music. I don't have any. I'm sorry. So here we go. I'm going to use an analogy from Game of Thrones. Hopefully you're a fan. If not, I apologize. Here we go. The hypothalamus is the big boss of this whole system. So it's like King Baratheon, or however you say his name. So the hypothalamus's job is to decide, are the gonads doing a good enough job? Is there enough estrogen or testosterone in the body? If the hypothalamus decides that there's not enough estrogen or testosterone, it's going to need to send a message, in this case, a hormone, because that's what our bodies use. And that hormone that the hypothalamus will make, if we need to make more sex hormone, is GnRH. It's like crow, right? Sending a message. So GnRH, which stands for gonadotropin releasing hormone. And this is going to give the message then in a paracrine fashion to that other part of the brain that we talked about, who is right there in King's Landing with King Baratheon, Ned Stark, the hand of the king, the pituitary gland, right? So the hypothalamus is going to decide there's not enough hormone. It's going to secrete its messenger, ta-da, GnRH, which is then going to go to the pituitary gland and say, hey, we need more hormone. So the pituitary gland says, okay, you need us to make more hormone. I'm not anywhere near the gonads, and I need to send a message to the gonads. So in order to get that message to the gonads, the pituitary gland is going to make hormones. Now these hormones have to travel through the bloodstream because the gonads are far away. So this is going to be endocrine secretion of two hormones, and those two hormones are, LH and FSH. So think of them like Sansa and Arya, okay? So LH and FSH now have to go forth all the way down to the gonads to convey this message from the pituitary gland that the gonads need to get to work. So again, this is endocrine. They're traveling through the bloodstream to a distant site. LH and FSH are what are called gonadotropins. If you remember the title of today's lecture, gonadotropins was one of the words. And the word sounds really complicated, but when you break it down, it makes sense. So gonado just refers to gonads. If something is trophic, that means it moves towards something. So gonadotropin means moving toward the gonads. So since both LH and FSH go from the pituitary to signal the gonads, we just call them as a group, the two of them, gonadotropins. So now you understand why the hormone the hypothalamus made to tell the pituitary to make LH and FSH was called gonadotropin releasing hormone, okay? Because LH and FSH are the gonadotropin. When they arrive at the gonads, they're each going to give a different message. LH is going to tell the gonads to make more sex cells, LH is going to tell the gonads to make more hormones. If they're ovaries, estrogen. If they're testes, testosterone. FSH is going to tell them to make gametes, right? Sex cells, sperm, or ova. Those are the two different messages that LH and FSH are going to send. So if we put it all together, the hypothalamus makes GnRH, which tells the pituitary gland to make LH and FSH. LH and FSH then tell the gonads to, in the case of LH, make more hormone, testosterone or estrogen, and FSH tells them to make more gametes, sperm, or mature eggs. So that's a review of that whole system and how they relate together. The other interesting thing about it is that this is a negative feedback system. So remember, hypothalamus is sitting in King's Landing looking to see, is there enough sex hormone around? If there's enough testosterone around or estrogen, the hypothalamus doesn't really care, either one is fine as far as the brain's concerned, then it's going to turn off GnRH. The pituitary will turn off LH and FSH, and the gonads will therefore halt production. Once levels then fall too low, the hypothalamus will turn GnRH on again, which will tell the pituitary to make LH and FSH again and get the gonads working again. So negative feedback systems, if you've taken a lot of biology classes, you've learned a lot about this. And if you haven't, maybe not so much. But a useful analogy is to think of a negative feedback system like, a thermostat, right? You set a level that you want it to be at. If it gets higher than that, you're going to shut the system down. In this case, the hypothalamus is going to stop making GnRH. You stop making LH and FSH. The gonads take a nap. Things get too cold, hormone levels get too low, then hypothalamus is going to turn on, make GnRH. That's going to tell the pituitary to make more LH and FSH. Gonads are going to get to work, making more hormones. Hormone levels come back up again. So negative feedback systems are excellent ways to maintain a certain variable, in this case, the level or concentration of sex hormone in the body, within a certain range. It's good for maintaining homeostasis. Again, another common biology term. Okay,